subscribe to our channel, hit like on this video, and leave your comments. The price of truth is discovered. Some find infidelity through forgotten texts, others by a strange perfume on a shirt. The beginning impact, the $5 million receipt. Eliza discovered it through a restaurant receipt in her husband's suit pocket, a receipt for 2 people on the day he claimed to have worked late. But what truly destroyed her was not finding out that Adrian had a mistress. It was discovering that the mistress was exactly the age of their daughter when the affair began, 5 years, and that in 3 days, he would be taking her to the most important social event of the year as his new partner. While he expected Eliza to stay home pretending not to know, he didn't know yet. But Eliza had also decided to appear at that event, and when she walked into that ballroom, nothing would ever be the same. The morning sun of New York City filtered through the silk curtains of the Sterling family mansion in Greenwich, casting a play of golden light that danced on the Italian marble of the entryway. At 32, Eliza Sterling possessed a head-turning beauty, rich brown hair that fell in soft waves over her shoulders, green eyes that shone with an almost hypnotic intensity, and a smile that, even when forced, managed to illuminate any room. She was delicately arranging fresh flowers in a crystal vase, a ritual that had become her silent way of finding peace amidst the turmoil of her life. "Mommy, can I help?" Sophie's sweet voice echoed down the hall, and Eliza felt her heart instantly warm. Her 5-year-old daughter was her greatest joy, a smaller version of herself, with the same expressive green eyes and natural sweetness that seemed to radiate from within. "Of course, my princess." Eliza smiled genuinely for the first time that morning, crouching down to her daughter's level. "How about you help me choose which flowers look best here?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically, her blonde curls bouncing as she carefully examined each bloom. It was in these moments that Eliza found the strength to continue, to maintain the facade of a perfect marriage that had long transformed into a golden prison. The sound of hurried footsteps on the marble staircase announced Adrian's arrival. At 38, he was unquestionably an impressive man. Tall, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled his tailored Italian suits, black hair always impeccably styled, and that confident smile that had conquered not only Eliza's heart years ago, but also the respect and admiration of the New York business world. Adrian Sterling was the CEO of Sterling & Associates, one of the largest business consultancies in North America. His meteoric rise in the corporate world was legendary, from an ambitious young man of modest means to one of the most powerful and influential men in the U.S. in less than a decade. But with success came a transformation Eliza had observed with increasing sadness. The kind, attentive man she fell in love with had given way to someone cold, calculating, and, what was worse, disrespectful. "Morning," Adrian muttered distractedly, barely glancing at his wife and daughter as he obsessively checked his phone. His messages seemed infinitely more interesting than the family he had promised to love and protect. "Daddy!" Sophie ran toward him with her small arms outstretched for a hug that Adrian mechanically returned. His eyes never left the device screen. "Hi, sweetie. Daddy's busy now," his voice said, with that thinly disguised impatience that had become his trademark at home. Eliza watched the scene with a heavy heart, seeing Sophie's bright eyes lose a bit of their enthusiasm. It was always like this. Adrian treated his own family as a social obligation, something to tolerate between important meetings and business commitments. "Adrian." Eliza tried to get his attention. Her voice was soft but firm. "It's Saturday. I thought we could spend the day together. Maybe take Sophie to the park or—" "Impossible." He interrupted her without looking up. "I need to review the presentation for the merger with the Rio de Janeiro hotel group. If we secure this contract, we're going to expand across all of Brazil." He finally looked at her, but his gaze was cold, almost condescending. "Some things are more important than park strolls, Eliza. I hope you understand that." The words hurt her deeply, but Eliza had learned to maintain her composure. Years of marriage to Adrian had taught her that showing pain or frustration only resulted in more coldness, more distance. "Of course," she replied, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sophie and I will find something to do." Adrian nodded absently, already typing a new message. Eliza couldn't help but notice how his fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, and something in his subtle smile as he typed made her stomach clench with a suspicion she had been trying to ignore for months. Adrian's phone began to ring, and he answered immediately, his voice adopting that charming, enveloping tone he reserved for people he considered important. "Maya, my dear," he said, walking toward his office. "Of course we can move up our meeting." Eliza felt the blood freeze in her veins. Maya. That name had appeared with increasing frequency in Adrian's conversations in recent months, always described as a promising executive or a talented consultant. But there was something in the way Adrian pronounced the name, a subtle intimacy, that set off all the alarms in Eliza's mind. "Mommy, is Daddy going to play with us?" Sophie asked, her small voice full of hope. Eliza crouched down again, taking her daughter's small hands. "Not today, my love, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a special day just for us. How about we go to the Tribeca Art Museum and then get ice cream at that shop you love so much?" Sophie's eyes lit up again, and Eliza was grateful to have such a resilient daughter, so capable of finding joy even when disappointed. As they prepared to leave, Eliza couldn't help but overhear fragments of Adrian's phone conversation drifting from the office. Words like, "get together," "reservation for two," and "I can't wait" reached her, each one like a small stab to the heart. Later, as they walked through the sunny streets of Tribeca, Sophie chatting animatedly about the paintings she wanted to see at the museum, Eliza allowed herself to think about what her life had become. There was a time when she and Adrian were inseparable, when he made her laugh until her stomach hurt, when his eyes shone with admiration every time he looked at her. She remembered how he used to surprise her with small romantic gestures, how he left love notes in her bag, how he held her hand during movies at the cinema. The change came when the man who once said she was the most important woman in his life began treating her like expensive furniture, something pretty to display at social events, but ultimately ignored in daily life. "Mommy, are you sad?" Sophie's innocent question brought her back to the present. "No, honey." Eliza smiled, kissing her daughter's head. "Mommy is just thinking about how lucky she is to have a special daughter like you." It was partly true. Sophie was her light, her reason to keep fighting, to maintain her dignity, even when she felt invisible in her own home. But beneath the surface, a storm of emotions was brewing. Grief, anger, confusion, and something she wasn't yet ready to admit. The growing certainty that her marriage had become a sham. That evening, after tucking Sophie into bed, Eliza found herself alone in the living room, idly flipping through a magazine. Adrian still hadn't returned from his meeting, and she couldn't stop thinking about the name Maya Durant and the way he had pronounced it. The sound of the front door opening made her heart race. Adrian walked in, looking pleased with himself, but his smile disappeared when he saw Eliza waiting for him. "Still awake?" he asked. "Nah." Loosening his tie. "How was your meeting?" Eliza asked, keeping her voice neutral. "Productive," he replied vaguely, pouring himself a whiskey at the bar. "The Rio Group is very interested. It could be our definitive entry into the Brazil market." Eliza nodded, but couldn't help asking, "And Maya was involved in the meeting too?" Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a flash of what might have been guilt or irritation, disappearing so quickly that she almost thought she had imagined it. "She coordinated the market analysis for the project," he said, his voice slightly strained. "Why do you ask?" "Curiosity," Eliza lied. "You talk about her a lot lately." Adrian looked at her with that expression she knew well, as if she were a child asking impertinent questions. "Eliza, you don't understand the complexities of the business world. Maya is a competent professional, nothing more." He finished his drink in one gulp. "I'm tired. Good night." And with that, he walked up the stairs, leaving Eliza alone with her suspicions and her breaking heart. That night, lying in bed next to a deeply sleeping husband, Eliza stared at the ceiling and wondered when she had become a stranger in her own life, when she had stopped fighting for her marriage and simply started surviving. Across town, New York continued to be alive and pulsating, a city full of possibilities and dreams. But within those luxurious walls, Eliza felt more alone than ever, unaware that soon her life would take a completely unexpected turn, and the strong, determined woman she once was about to rise from the ashes of her failed marriage. The week continued its usual course in the Sterling mansion. Adrian left earlier and returned later, always with elaborate excuses about emerging market analysis and international expansion strategies that demanded his constant attention. Eliza had become a specialist in interpreting the signals. The phone he carried everywhere, as if it were an extension of his own body. The secret smiles while texting, the different perfume that sometimes permeated his clothing. It was a rainy Thursday when everything finally changed. Sophie had stayed at school for an extra activity, and Eliza decided to use the free afternoon to catch up on some household chores. She was organizing the closet when she found one of Adrian's suits that needed to go to the dry cleaner. As she checked the pockets, a habit developed after years of marriage. Her fingers touched something that made her heart stop, a small, folded piece of paper. With slightly trembling hands, she unfolded what was clearly a restaurant receipt. But it wasn't just any restaurant. It was the iconic Le Bernardin in Midtown, one of the city's most exclusive and romantic establishments. The receipt was for 2 people, including a bottle of expensive champagne and dishes Adrian would never order for a business meeting. What made her completely collapse, however, was the date. 2 days prior, exactly the day he had claimed to be at the office preparing reports for the Brazil investors, and arrived home after midnight, too exhausted for dinner. Eliza sat down heavily on the closet bench, the receipt still in her hands, feeling as if the world had tilted on its axis. All the suspicions, all the signals she had tried to rationalize or ignore, suddenly crystallized into one undeniable, painful truth. The sound of the phone ringing brought her back to reality. It was Julian Hayes, Adrian's partner. Ironically, one of the only true friends she still had. "Eliza, my dear." His warm, concerned voice came across the line. "Julian," she managed to say, "do you have a few minutes? I need to talk to someone." "Always," he replied immediately. "I'm on my way." 40 minutes later, Eliza found herself in the living room serving Julian coffee, while she tried to find words to express the storm of emotions raging in her heart. He watched her with those compassionate brown eyes, patiently waiting for her to find the courage to speak. "Julian," she began, her voice barely a whisper. Do you know something about Adrian? Something I should know?" The silence that followed was a sufficient answer. She saw the pain reflected in Julian's face, the internal struggle between loyalty to his partner and genuine concern for her. He finally spoke, his voice heavy with sorrow. "How long have we been friends?" "More than 10 years, since before my marriage." "Then you know I would never lie to you." Julian leaned forward, hands clasped. "But you also know this is an impossible position for me." Eliza showed him the restaurant receipt. "I found this today." Julian looked at the paper and closed his eyes, as if feeling physical pain. When he opened them again, there was sadness and determination in them. "Her name is Maya Durant," he said, each word coming out with difficulty. "She's 27, a marketing consultant. She's been working with us for about 6 months." Eliza felt as if she had been punched in the gut. Hearing the confirmation of her worst suspicions was even more painful than she had imagined. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "I'd say it started 5 months ago, maybe a little longer." Julian sighed deeply. "Eliza, I tried to talk to Adrian several times. I tried to make him see the madness of what he was doing, what he was risking, his family, his reputation, everything. And what did he say? He said I was old-fashioned, that I didn't understand the complexities of modern life." The bitterness in Julian's voice was palpable. "He said you were content to be just a trophy wife, that Maya challenged him intellectually." The words stung her deeply, more painful coming through Julian, who she knew was trying to soften the blow. "Trophy wife," she repeated, testing the words on her tongue like poison. "He's wrong, Eliza," Julian said vehemently. "Completely wrong. You are one of the smartest, most talented women I know. The fact that you chose to dedicate yourself to your family does not diminish your value at all." Eliza stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the perfectly manicured garden she herself had planned and overseen. Everything in her life seemed perfectly arranged on the outside, but inside it was crumbling. 5 months, she murmured. 27 years old is exactly the age I was when Adrian and I got married. The cruel irony of the situation was not lost on her. While she built a life, created a home, being the perfect wife he seemed to want, Adrian was building a parallel lie, a secret life that completely excluded and beyond everything they had promised each other. "Eliza." Julian approached her, his voice soft but firm. "You need to know one more thing." She turned, seeing something in his eyes that made her dread what was coming next. "There is a gala event next week. The Manhattan Business Council's annual party at the Plaza Hotel. Adrian is going to be there, and—" He hesitated, clearly struggling with the words. "Maya will also be there, as his official escort." Eliza's world seemed to stop completely. She leaned against the window frame, feeling her legs give way. "Official escort," she repeated, her voice coming out as a choked whisper. "He told trade press that she is his new strategic partner, that she will be officially introduced to the New York Business Society at this event." Julian clenched his fists, his own anger manifesting. "Eliza, forgive me for having to be the one to tell you this, but you deserve to know." "And me?" she asked, still processing the magnitude of the betrayal. "What excuse did he give for my absence? He said you were taking care of personal family matters, that you prefer to keep your private life away from the business spotlight." Eliza closed her eyes, feeling a toxic mix of humiliation, anger, and a grief so deep it felt physical. Adrian wasn't just having an affair. He was actively replacing her, erasing her existence from his public life. "How much longer, Julian?" she asked, opening her eyes and looking at him. "How much longer does he intend to keep up this charade? Honestly, I think he plans to file for divorce after the deal with the Brazilians is finalized." Julian sighed. "Maya, she isn't just a mistress, Eliza. She's ambitious, calculating. I think she sees you as a stepping stone to building her own empire." The revelation was like the final blow. Eliza sat down heavily on the armchair, processing not only the end of her marriage, but the cruel, public way it was being executed. "He's going to leave me with nothing," she murmured. "He's going to paint me as the inadequate wife, the woman who failed to support his professional growth. Not if he doesn't have a choice," Julian said, a new determination emerging in his voice. "Eliza, you are not the same vulnerable woman who married Adrian 7 years ago. You have grown, evolved. You have become a quiet but powerful force. It's time to prove it." She looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "You go to the gala event, Eliza." "Julian, I can't." "You can, and you will." He interrupted her gently, but firmly. Not as the humiliated wife hiding at home, but as the strong, elegant woman you are, Let Adrian and his mistress know you won't disappear quietly. And how do you suggest I do that? Eliza's voice carried a tone of desperation. I don't even have an invitation. Julian smirked for the first time since he arrived. You go as my escort. I am a partner in the firm. I have the right to bring whomever I want. And, he paused significantly, I have some information about Adrian's questionable business practices that might be enlightening. Julian, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He stood up and walked toward her. Eliza, Adrian isn't just betraying you. He's also betraying the ethical principles of our company. There are irregular contracts, undeclared commissions, a series of activities that could destroy our reputation if brought to light. Are you talking about blackmail? I'm talking about justice, Julian corrected, and protecting you and Sophie from what's to come. That night, after Julian left, Eliza found herself in Sophie's room, watching her daughter sleep peacefully. The innocence on the little girl's face contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions raging in her mother's heart. Mommy is going to fight for us, my princess, she whispered, gently kissing her daughter's forehead. I won't let him treat us like we are disposable. When Adrian arrived home that night, later than ever, with Maya's perfume still on his skin, he found Eliza waiting for him in the living room. But there was something different about her, something he couldn't quite identify. Still awake? He asked as usual. Adrian, she said, her voice surprisingly quiet and controlled. We need to talk. He looked at her suspiciously, noticing the change in her posture, the way she held her shoulders straight, her chin up. About what? About the gala event next week. Eliza rose gracefully, walking toward him. I heard you'll have a special escort. Adrian's face slightly paled, but he quickly regained his composure. Eliza, can I explain? You don't need to. She interrupted him, her voice maintaining that unnerving calm. In fact, I think it will be a very revealing night for everyone involved. What do you mean by that? Eliza smiled. Not the forced, submissive smile he knew, but something new. Something that carried a dangerous promise. You'll find out in due time, Adrian. Good night. And with that, she walked up the stairs, leaving him alone with his lies, and a growing feeling that he had completely underestimated the woman he had married. Act 7. The Emerald Execution. The days leading up to the gala event were a whirlwind of preparation and transformation for Eliza. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to spend money on herself. Not just the quick, practical purchases she had grown accustomed to, but a genuine investment in her own image and confidence. On Monday morning, while Adrian rushed out for another of his important meetings, Eliza called Isabel Vega, an old university friend who had become one of New York's most sought-after stylists. Eliza Sterling! Isabel's voice resonated across the line, filled with genuine surprise and joy. It's been so long. I heard you married that famous CEO. How's the high society life? Complicated, Eliza answered honestly. Isabel, I need your help. I need a dress for the Manhattan Business Council Gala, and I need to look unforgettable. There was a pause on the other end, and Eliza could almost hear the mechanisms of Isabel's creative mind working. What kind of unforgettable are we talking about here, darling? The traffic-stopping kind? Or the relationship-destroying kind? The latter, Eliza said without a... Perfect. Isabel smiled with satisfaction. I'll be at your house in an hour with some options that will make you feel like the goddess you always were. When Isabel arrived, accompanied by 3 assistants carrying enormous bags of clothing and accessories, Eliza felt as if she was about to undergo a complete metamorphosis. My dear, Isabel said, studying Eliza with professional eyes. You're thinner, and there's a tension in your shoulders that wasn't there in college. But your eyes have a fire I've never seen before. That's good. Very good. The next 3 hours were a transformative experience. Isabel had brought 5 dresses, each one more dazzling than the last. There was a blood-red one that hugged every curve provocatively, a navy blue one with crystal details that distilled regal elegance, and a black one with a structured neckline that was both sophisticated and devastating. But it was the fifth dress that made Eliza stop breathing. It was a deep emerald green, the same color as her eyes, with a cut that perfectly combined modernity and classicism. The fabric flowed like water over her body, accentuating her silhouette without being vulgar, and the back was a work of subtle, seductive art. "This one," she said simply, looking in the mirror and no longer seeing the neglected wife she had become, but the powerful woman who had been sleeping inside her for years. "I knew you'd choose this one." Isabel smiled with satisfaction. "It's the hardest one to wear. It requires absolute confidence, but on you, it's going to be devastating." They spent the rest of the afternoon choosing shoes, jewelry, and discussing hairstyle options. Isabel insisted on scheduling Eliza with her own beauty team, people who worked with celebrities and international models. "Eliza," Isabel said as they organized everything, "can I ask what's really going on? You look like a woman on a mission." Eliza considered for a moment whether to share the sordid details of her situation, but something in Isabel's compassionate expression made her decide on honesty. "My husband has been having an affair for 5 months. He's taking the mistress to the gala event as his official business partner, while I'm supposed to stay home like an obedient wife, pretending I don't know anything." Isabel's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What kind of man does that to a woman like you?" "The kind who forgot he married a woman, not a decorative accessory." Eliza's voice carried a cold determination. "But he's going to remember it in a very public and very memorable way." "Good." Isabel smiled with a malice that reminded Eliza why they had been close friends in college. "In that case, we'll make sure you're absolutely unforgettable." Meanwhile, at the Sterling and Associates office, Adrian was having his own set of tense conversations. Julian had requested a private meeting, and Adrian could feel his partner's disapproval emanating from him like heat waves. "Adrian, we need to talk about Maya," Julian said directly, closing the office door. "Julian, we've already talked about this. She's a competent professional, and she's charging unauthorized commissions from the Brazil clients." "She is, and she's charging unauthorized commissions from the Brazil clients." Julian interrupted him. "I found discrepancies in the contracts she drafted, commissions that go directly into a private account of hers. Adrian, you are being used." Julian's voice was full of pity and frustration. "Maya isn't interested in you. She's interested in your position, your access to clients, your signature on the contracts. You're exaggerating because you never liked her." "I'm trying to save our company and your reputation," Julian retorted. "And by the way, maybe save your marriage too. Maya is ambitious and thus calculating. I think she sees you as a stepping stone to building her own empire." "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked. His voice was defeated. "End it with her publicly. At the gala event, make it clear there was a misunderstanding about her status in the company. Go home to your wife and try to rebuild what can still be saved. And if I don't," Julian sighed deeply, "then I will be forced to present this evidence to the association's board of directors. Adrian, our business reputation is at stake. I cannot allow this to continue." That evening, Adrian arrived home earlier than usual, finding Eliza in the living room reading a book. There was something different about her, a serenity he hadn't seen in years, as if she had made an important decision. He began by sitting beside her on the sofa. "Can we talk?" She marked the page of her book and looked at him, her green eyes calm but alert. "Clear about the gala event." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Maybe you should go with me. After all, as my wife." Eliza studied him for a long moment, and Adrian felt uncomfortable under her penetrating gaze. "Adrian, is there something you'd like to tell me?" "What are you talking about?" "Maya, about what's really going on between you two." Adrian felt his heart race. How did she know? What did she know? "You don't need to explain now," she said, rising gracefully. "As you said, some revelations are best left for the opportune moment. I'll see you at the gala event, Adrian. It's going to be a very interesting night." And with that, she walked up the stairs, leaving him alone with his lies, and a growing sense that he had completely lost control of the situation. Act 8. The confrontation. The Plaza Hotel was resplendent that October night. The golden lights of the neoclassical facade created a majestic glow that reflected in the luxury cars arriving in a constant stream. The Manhattan Business Council annual event was always the most prestigious on the city's social and business calendar, bringing together the business elite, influential politicians, and media personalities. Adrian arrived at 8 p.m., impeccably dressed in a custom Armani tuxedo, with Maya on his arm. She wore a glittering gold dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled in a sophisticated updo. At 27, Maya Durant possessed a calculated beauty. Every gesture, every smile, every movement seemed carefully planned to cause maximum impact. "You're nervous," she observed as they walked down the red carpet, greeting photographers and trade journalists. "Just focused," Adrian replied, but his hand gripping her arm betrayed his tension. "Remember, you are my new strategic partner, responsible for international expansion. Nothing more, nothing less." Maya smiled, but there was something sharp in her eyes. "Of course, darling. Whatever you want." The hotel's grand ballroom was decorated with refined elegance, white and gold flowers in monumental arrangements, crystal chandeliers that created a dazzling play of light, and tables strategically arranged to favor networking and business conversations. Adrian and Maya were immediately surrounded by other executives, journalists, and important figures. Adrian introduced Maya with the rehearsed speech about her professional competence and strategic vision, but he couldn't help but notice the speculative glances exchanged among them. New York high society was small, and everyone knew Adrian was married. Eduardo Sierra, the president of the council, approached with a political smile. "A pleasure to see you here, and this must be the famous Maya we've heard so much about." "Eduardo, always a pleasure." Adrian extended his hand. "Yes, this is Maya Durant, our new director of international expansion." "Fascinating," Eduardo said, but his eyes carried a curiosity that went beyond the professional. "And your wife, Adrian? It's been a while since we saw her at public events." Adrian felt a knot form in his stomach. "Eliza prefers to handle personal family matters. You know how she is." "Of course." Eduardo nodded, but there was an oddness in his tone that made Adrian uncomfortable. Across the room, near the main entrance, Julian Hayes checked his watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes. It was 8:40 p.m., and Eliza still hadn't arrived. He was starting to wonder if she had changed her mind, if the courage she had shown during the week had finally abandoned her. It was then that the conversations in the room began to gradually fade, like ripples spreading across a lake. Heads turned toward the entrance, whispers started circulating, and even the orchestra seemed to play softer, as if instinctively recognizing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Eliza Sterling had arrived. She appeared at the top of the marble staircase that descended into the main ballroom, and for a moment that seemed eternal. Time simply stopped. The emerald green dress flowed around her body like liquid water, catching and reflecting the lights of the chandeliers in an almost magical way. Her posture was that of a queen, shoulders straight, chin up, and those green eyes, which had always been her trademark, now shone with an intensity that seemed to illuminate the entire room. She descended the steps slowly, every movement calculated for maximum impact. There was no hurry or anxiety, just an absolute confidence that radiated from her like a palpable aura. The silence in the room was almost deafening. 200 people, CEOs, politicians, socialites, journalists, all stopped what they were doing to watch this dazzling woman who had appeared like a vision. My God, Someone whispered near the entrance. "Who is she?" "That's Adrian Sterling's wife," came the hushed answer. "Eliza Sterling. It's been years since we saw her in public." Adrian, who was in the center of the room talking to a group of investors, felt a chill run down his spine before he turned around. There was something about the quality of the silence, the way conversations had ceased, that made his survival instinct sound all the alarms. When he finally turned and saw her, his face visibly paled. This was not the submissive, neglected Eliza he had left at home for months. This was a completely transformed woman, a force of nature in human form, and she was walking directly toward him. Maya followed Adrian's gaze and felt her own stomach clench. She had seen photos of Eliza, old photos from social events, some casual images Adrian had on his phone. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the magnetic presence of the woman who now completely dominated the attention of everyone in the room. "Adrian," Maya whispered, her voice filled with a rarely shown insecurity. "It's her, isn't it?" He couldn't answer. He was completely mesmerized by the vision of his wife, a wife he had neglected, underestimated, and betrayed, walking toward him with the confidence of a warrior goddess. Eliza reached where they were standing, and the circle of businessmen around them automatically parted to let her through, as if instinctively recognizing they were in the presence of someone extraordinary. "Adrian," she said. Her voice was soft, yet charged with an authority that brought everyone present to a complete hush. "What a surprise to find you here." She turned toward Maya, studying her with a gaze that was both assessing and completely impassive. "And you must be Maya Durant. I've heard so much about you." Maya tried to smile. She tried to summon that calculated confidence that had always served her well. But something in Eliza's gaze made her feel like a child being evaluated by an adult. I am Maya," she managed to say. "I work with Adrian in international expansion." "How interesting," Eliza said, her tone remaining perfectly cordial. "International expansion. Adrian always had such a passion for new territories." The insinuation was not lost on anyone in the observing circle. Several businessmen exchanged meaningful glances, and more than one journalist discreetly activated their cell phone recorder. "Eliza." Adrian finally found his voice, although it came out huskier than intended. "What are you doing here?" She smiled then. Not the submissive, conciliatory smile he knew, but something new, something that carried a dangerous promise. "I am here as Julian's escort, naturally. I hope you don't mind. After all, I am also part of the Sterling family." It was then that Julian Hayes appeared by her side, offering her his arm in a chivalrous manner. He was elegantly dressed, but it was the protective way he positioned himself next to Eliza that made Adrian feel a pang of what might have been jealousy. "Good evening, Adrian," Julian said. His voice maintained professional cordiality, but his eyes held a coldness Adrian had never seen before. "Maya." "Julian," Adrian replied, his mind furiously working to understand the dynamics of the situation. "I didn't know you and Eliza." "We are old friends," Eliza replied before Julian could speak. "It's comforting to have true friends, don't you think? People you can completely trust." The word trust dropped like a bomb into the middle of the conversation. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face, and Maya instinctively took a step closer to him, as if seeking protection. Eduardo Sierra appeared again, clearly sensing the tension in the air, but determined to maintain the event's cordiality. "How wonderful to have the whole Sterling family here tonight. Eliza, you look absolutely stunning. It's been too long." "Thank you, Eduardo." Eliza smiled warmly. "It's good to be back." "Back?" Adrian repeated involuntarily. "At social events, darling," Eliza said, looking him directly in the eye. "I realized I was missing out on so many things by staying home. So many interesting conversations, so many revelations." The orchestra began to play a classic waltz, and the room gradually resumed its activities. though many eyes were still discreetly focused on the drama unfolding at the center of the ballroom. Eliza. Julian extended his hand. Would you care to dance? I would love to, she replied, accepting his hand without even looking at Adrian. As they headed to the dance floor, Adrian stood rooted, watching his wife. A wife he suddenly realized he might never have truly known, dancing gracefully in his partner's arms. Her every movement was elegant, confident, magnetically attractive. It was impossible not to watch her, impossible not to be drawn to her transformed presence. Act 9. The Unraveling. Are you okay, darling? Maya whispered beside him. Her voice was full of insecurity. Maybe we should leave. But Adrian couldn't move. He was completely mesmerized by the woman on the dance floor, a woman he had taken for granted for years. A woman who was now showing him and everyone present exactly what he had lost. The waltz ended, but Eliza and Julian remained on the dance floor for a few more beats, talking in whispers that seemed intimate and conspiratorial. Adrian watched every gesture, every smile, every moment of closeness between them with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Are you all right? Julian asked softly. Better than I've been in years, Eliza replied. Thank you for giving me the courage to be here. The courage was always there, Eliza. You just let it sleep for a while. When they returned to the social area, they found Adrian alone. Maya had disappeared, probably to the restroom, trying to compose herself and plan her next move. Adrian. Eliza approached him with that same unnerving calm. Can we talk privately? Adrian nodded, unable to refuse. There was something about her presence that completely magnetized him. They walked to one of the hotel's side terraces, a more reserved space overlooking the illuminated gardens of New York. Once alone, the veneer of social cordiality finally began to crack. What are you doing, Eliza? Adrian asked. His voice was filled with frustration and confusion. I'm being myself, she replied simply. Something I forgot how to do in the last few years. You know what I mean? This transformation, showing up here with Julian, publicly embarrassing me. Embarrassing you? Eliza interrupted, her green eyes flashing dangerously. Adrian, you brought your mistress to a public event and introduced her as your partner. Who was embarrassing whom? Adrian paled. How did you know? How do I know? Eliza took a step closer, her voice maintaining that unsettling calm. I know about Le Bernardin. I know about the 5 months of lies. I know about the plans to publicly discard me while elevating Maya to the status of your new companion. I can explain. You don't need to, she interrupted surprisingly calmly. In fact, I should thank you. You did me a great favor by showing me who you truly are. Imagine if I had discovered this 10 years from now, after wasting even more of my life trying to be the perfect wife for a man who didn't deserve a single day of my dedication. The words wounded Adrian more deeply than he ever imagined words could hurt, because somewhere, deep down, he knew she was right. And Sophie? He asked, trying to regain some control of the situation. Sophie will be fine, Eliza replied. She has a mother who loves her unconditionally and who will fight for her. As for the father, she paused significantly. Well, that will depend on your decisions from now on. What do you mean? I mean you have 2 options, Adrian. You can do this civilly. Divide our assets fairly, establish a custody agreement that prioritizes Sophie's well-being, and maintain a minimum of dignity in the process. Or, Eliza smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Julian can choose to share some interesting information with the council's board of directors about certain financial irregularities involving the Brazil contracts. Adrian felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. You wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. Eliza's eyes narrowed. Adrian, you spent the last 5 months lying to me, betraying me, humiliating me, and planning to discard me as if I were old furniture. What makes you think I still deserve your protection? It was at that moment that Maya appeared at the entrance to the terrace, clearly having searched for Adrian. She had retouched her makeup and recomposed her posture, but there was still visible tension in her shoulders. "Adrian, darling," she said, trying to sound casual. "People are looking for you. There are some investors who would like—" "Maya." Eliza turned toward her with a smile that was pure elegance and pure venom. "How good of you to be here. I was just talking to Adrian about decisions and consequences." Maya looked nervously between Adrian and Eliza, clearly sensing the tension in the air, but not fully understanding its source. "You know," Eliza continued, walking slowly around Maya, like a predator studying its prey. "I heard you're very talented at expanding territories. Julian told me some fascinating things about your creativity with international contracts." Maya's face instantly lost color. I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm sure you don't," Eliza said softly. "But I'm sure the IRS would be very interested in learning more about those creative commissions that appeared in private accounts." "Adrian!" Maya turned to him, panic beginning to surface in her voice. "What is she talking about?" Adrian looked between the two women. His wife transformed into an unstoppable force, and his mistress suddenly looking very young and very vulnerable. For the first time in months, he began to see the situation clearly. Maya was not the sophisticated, independent woman he had thought. She was an opportunist who had seen in him an opportunity for financial and social advancement. And Eliza was everything he had forgotten she could be. Intelligent, strong, magnificent. "I think you should leave," he finally said, his voice tired. "What?" Maya looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "Adrian, you can't be serious. After everything we—" "After what?" Eliza interrupted softly. "After you used my family to advance your career? After you stole from the company my husband built? After you tried to destroy a marriage for your own benefit? I love Adrian," Maya finally exploded, showing real emotion. "No," Eliza said with unshakable certainty. "You love what Adrian represents. The power, the money, the status. But as for Adrian, the man, I doubt you even know him." Maya looked at Adrian, expecting him to defend her, to deny the accusations. But he remained silent. And in that silence, she saw the truth. "You are going to regret this," she finally said, her mask of sophistication completely falling. "Both of you are going to regret this." "Maybe," Eliza said calmly. "But at least we will regret it with dignity." Maya left the terrace with quick, furious steps, leaving Adrian and Eliza alone again. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 7 years of marriage, months of betrayal, and the inevitable reality of what was to come. "And now what?" Adrian asked finally. "Now you choose," Eliza replied. "Dignity or destruction, cooperation or war, respect or public humiliation." Adrian looked at the woman in front of him, his wife, the mother of his daughter, the woman he had sworn to love and protect. And he saw not only what he had lost, but what he had never truly appreciated. "Eliza," he said, his voice slightly breaking. I don't—" She interrupted him gently. "Not now, Adrian. Some words lose their power when they are said too late. You made your decision 5 months ago. Now I am making mine." She turned to leave, but paused at the terrace entrance. "Oh, and Adrian, the next time you choose a woman, make sure she loves you for the man you are, not for what you possess. You deserve that, and so does she." And with those words, Eliza Sterling left the terrace and Adrian's life forever, leaving him alone with his decisions and his consequences. Do you think Eliza made the right choice? Would you have forgiven Adrian? Share your insights in the comments.